I've written and spoken many times on reporting status to executives, providing executives decision-making criteria and information they need to make the right strategic and tactical decisions in day-to-day activities. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. I see an opportunity for the copywriter or technical writer who wants to help an organization better communicate, where you can provide advice on executive status reporting. So how do teams and programs and projects report to executives to provide a highlight of activities, and then how to take those activities, especially for a public company, and turn them into their annual reports or turn them into marketing materials. So for example, let's say you have a large engineering project that has 4 or 5 subcomponents. So the project has 4 or 5 deliverables. The performance of those deliverables is important to the executive. But let's say that's a strategic project that is launching a new product. Those same reports could provide information that has unique selling benefits, challenges overcome, other opportunities for copy. So let's say the engineering product is a lift system for warehouses. So this is the scissor lift system that's completely robotic and automated. And the key problem they found in the beginning was that while a person can run the scissor lift system by standing in the little cart at the top, their robotic system originally had cameras in the bottom. And by the way, I'm making this up. There is no robotic system as of this moment, or this is not related directly to a project that I'm doing. But let's say originally they designed it with a camera in the bottom, and many of the competitors had cameras in the bottom. And so this automated lift system that's used like in places like Amazon or in warehouses where they do a lift and pick, it actually had cameras in the bottom, but they realized the operator standing in the top has a better view of what's going on. So they add an additional camera in the top. So the status report might identify a problem. So there's an emerging risk, and the risk is the accuracy of the camera in the base unit. And the solution they find is to add a second camera in the lift element itself. So one camera is stationary on the floor that's useful for object avoidance, and the other camera is in the lift, which is useful for identifying the proper elevation for or obstacles associated with pulling something off the shelf. Well, as a copywriter, guiding them on the valuable information that's useful to make decisions, this is the communications element in that status report. And now this is not a status report somebody's going to do on a weekly basis. This is a monthly summary of the challenges, solutions, and outcomes. You can actually roll that up to the executive. The executive's better informed, but then at the end of the month or the end of the year, you're going to have a stack of these pieces that you can then write into the annual report. Now, a whole stack of these might turn into a few paragraphs in an annual report, but it's part of that research that's necessary to understand the product and the solutions it delivers. So let's say this robotic scissor lift system, completely automated, works within another project, which is a warehouse management system. And you find there are problems on both sides. There are commonalities between other competitive products that they were looking at during the development. And then ultimately it ends up having these certain benefits. All that would be captured in monthly and quarterly reports to executive and board level individuals. See, the executives and the board, they don't care about the activities you're doing. What they care about is the emerging risks. They care about the problems you're solving. They care about the solutions, and they care about the benefits. Because sometimes they're pitching to venture capitalists, for example. They might be pitching to banks. They need those talking points that are relevant to the decisions, the activities, funding, the strategy. So as a copywriter, you have an opportunity to guide them on their internal communication strategy. And that's very understood by executive level decision makers. What is your system for extracting from the organization the key information you need as an executive to make critical decisions and get the outcomes that you're looking for? Next, you can help them with their regulatory associated communications. So that would be, how do we take the status and current activities of the business and we map it back to the regulatory requirements of the organization? So someone building a scissor lift system would have OSHA related requirements. They would have electrical, like IEEE or different types of electrical requirements within the components themselves. They may have certain types of FCC, radio interference. So they got a robotic system running around with antennas on it and stuff. They may have to have regulatory mapping back to FCC requirements as far as how the machine broadcasts, at what power range can it broadcast. Well, there's another communications opportunity that you can come in and help them with their regulatory reporting. And this is more technical writing than copywriting. But again, it fuels that feed to their sales materials. And see, this is how we get you from a freelance copywriter or a little tiny shop to a fully functioning agency that is providing communication solutions for complex problems. So they've got this scissor lift, they've got their regulatory reporting. Now what's next? Well, we need to sell this thing. And if they're doing the right internal communications, if they're doing the right regulatory communications, now we can, if it's a publicly traded company, now we can make sure that we get the white papers and the SEC filings clean. So now the company could have an annual letter. You could extract information to put into their annual letter. That's going to be more copywriting. Their SEC filings is going to be both technical and copywriting. But the key is if they have the right internal communication strategy, if they have the right regulatory communication strategy, and you've helped them library all these materials so executives at a glance can search the materials. Now, I actually worked with Xerox for library systems that were used for legal firms. So all these materials would get gathered someplace, and then you can search the materials to find the answers, to make the decisions, to get the background necessary. You might actually train people how to summarize these reports into executive briefings or situational reports. But ultimately, this whole library will be available to you to write sales copy. So more than just a brochure. What's the marketing campaign to sell the scissor lift? It might help with lead generation, might be able to help them with the database marketing that's necessary to find organizations that are qualified. So, for example, in a robotic scissor lift system is going to be more valuable to industrial warehousing because Amazon has smaller robots they develop themselves. But there may be a competitor like eBay, which has their own warehouses. There may be a competitor that can use your system as well. You may help them with market research. The market research can help them know whether they need a small, medium, and large size. Maybe they have a robotic pick basket system that is a scissor lift design, but it's smaller. It's autonomous, but maybe they also have a large one that's autonomous with risk aversion, but it has a human operator. So maybe the scissor lift has cameras in it to reduce legal liability. That's your regulatory report detail. Because when an operator is running it, if there's a mistake, you actually have footage of what happened. You may have proximity warnings that are added to the larger system that are not in the smaller system because the larger system can reach the ceiling of the facility. But do you see what I'm talking about here? You're not just a copywriter. You're a marketer of communication services. You're a marketer of copywriting services. And you have an opportunity both in the technical writing, the regulatory writing, and also the sales writing. Now, I know a lot of copywriters out there are just writing the sales letter. They're waiting until something happens and writing the sales letter. Well, if you're involved in the internal communications, you're going to start picking up ideas where, hey, look, you're about to slip a delivery. You've got a pending orders. Hey, executive, why don't we do a press release about the new features? Now, we're going to talk about them in benefits, but about the new features that you've got online as the reason why you're slipping the deadline. That's strategic communications. And then you first send out a letter to the customers who have pre-ordered. Now, Tesla has done this. A lot of people ordered the Teslas and pre-ordered the Teslas, and then the Teslas slipped the deadlines to get out. So they do a big campaign where they sent letters to people who had ordered the Teslas. They did presentations about the new features, and they were very transparent. Hey, look, we're late on this because we've developed these 3 new solutions to the big problems that you didn't know you had. And now that we've done this, it's slowed things down a little bit, but you're going to get a better product for the same price. And see that spin, that strategic communications helps not only the executive, especially if they're publicly traded, it helps the customers, and it also helps the engineers and the folks doing the work better communicate their position. This is a huge opportunity for copywriting agencies, marketers, and business development professionals. It allows you to start marketing earlier in the development process. So it doesn't matter if they're designing a new scissor lift, whether they're designing a Tesla, whether they're putting together a larger project. A lot of developers, land developers, would follow these methods as well. You create press releases along the way, sales materials, white papers, positioning statements, all kinds of reports, all kinds of annual reports. I said white papers. Do you see how much opportunity is there? And so many copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals miss this. I was doing business development work, and I was supporting some radar systems that were being sold to the Pentagon and several military offices. Most of our meetings were in Crystal City, where we would demonstrate the software side, and then the radar actual systems were elsewhere, and we would connect to them or connect to data streams. But in the development of that product, as we demoed the product, we received all kinds of inputs and feedback and all kinds of, hey, can it do this? It'd be really nice it can do this. I watched business development professionals much smarter than myself, my mentors, basically say, well, if we could do that, how many would you like to purchase? Or when we can do this, how many would you like to purchase? And we would write up a memo and really interact with that customer, and then send that memo over to the engineers, and then work with the engineers' feedback in order to frame the expectations for the end user. And they were able to sell hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these systems because they were actually serving customers' needs. But it was the channels of communications that made it possible. It wasn't some salesperson in the field promising something they couldn't deliver. It was a salesperson in the field collecting information, gathering resources, doing research on the customer's needs, writing it up in such a way that engineers could utilize it, so new specifications and requirements, and then getting it into a life cycle. Now, some of the things that customers wanted were absurd, and they weren't going to happen anytime soon. But they were useful to that customer, and they were useful to a $10 to $20 million contract. So there was actually a need for that internal communications to feed back so we could let a customer know when something's coming down the line. I'm not sure if you're familiar with when you're in the $1 million, $2 million, $20 million contract range, they can actually buy something 5 years out, and they can buy it before it's even developed. And they're basically earmarking future funds. Now the program can still get canceled, but they're earmarking future funds so that basically you have time to get the requirements in place, and they have a message to solve that need. Folks, this is a massive and valuable opportunity for the copywriter who's willing to manage a small team. 2 or 3 people on your team. You may need to bring in subject matter experts from time to time, but the communications models are well within the wheelhouse of any copywriter. The workflow is well within the wheelhouse of any copywriter. And if you have questions about implementing what I'm describing today, this $1 million opportunity for copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals, be sure to visit us at www.adbriefings.co.uk to ask your questions. Again, I'm Justin Hitt. I've done technical writing, copywriting. I've ghostwritten books, reports, white papers, all those and more using simple methods that I'll teach you here. Once you put these methods in place, you'll have a steady flow of accurate and useful information. Even more valuable, the decision makers you serve will also have a steady flow of accurate and useful information for them to make strategic decisions. As their company grows, you become a valuable asset in their organization as a contractor, sometimes as an employee, but ultimately as a valuable resource that helps them solve big problems with words that sell. Thanks for listening.